Facing a midlife crisis? Find courage in everyday women's stories. Subscribe to Resilient Women Rising.
The Echoes of Forgotten Promises. How a 45-year-old divorced woman found redemption in love. Miranda Hale never imagined that one forgotten box in her attic could shatter the fragile peace she'd painstakingly built after her divorce. It was a warm spring afternoon when, while sorting through old belongings in the attic of her modest suburban home, she uncovered a battered leather diary with a faded gold clasp. The diary's weathered pages whispered secrets from a past she had long believed to be buried, a past of broken promises, heartache, and mysteries that still haunted her dreams. The moment Miranda cracked open the diary, her pulse quickened. The first entry, dated over 20 years ago, was penned in an elegant flowing script. It chronicled moments of hope and despair, capturing the bittersweet memories of a woman who had loved deeply and risked everything for a love as turbulent as it was passionate. As Miranda read, the familiar echoes of her own story reverberated through her mind. Had she too been blinded by promises that eventually crumbled into betrayal? Her heart pounded as she discovered a passage that made her blood run cold. I am leaving behind the truth of who I truly am. If fate ever leads you back to me, know that my secret will bind us forever, for better or worse. Miranda's hands trembled. For years, she had suspected that there was more to her former marriage than she'd ever been told. Her ex-husband, Robert, had been charming and enigmatic man whose answers always skirted the painful depths of his past. Now, this diary, the confessional of an unknown woman whose identity was obscured by cryptic phrase, hinted at a hidden life that Robert had desperately guarded. Was it a secret love? A forbidden liaison? Or perhaps a betrayal so profound it had set the course for her lonely years thereafter? In the silence of the attic, Miranda's grief intermingled with a fierce determination. The diary was not merely a relic of old sorrows. It was a call to reclaim the strength and resilience she'd long thought lost. As the setting sun cast long shadows through the small attic window, Miranda resolved to unearth the truth. She would confront the past head-on, not to relive the pain, but to rewrite her future. A few days later, a mysterious envelope arrived at her door. There was no return address, only her name, scrawled in a bold, unfamiliar hand. Inside was a single sheet of paper bearing a tantalizing message. Meet me at the Bluebell Cafe at dusk. There are things about Robert you must know. A friend. The note was as enigmatic as the diary. It hinted at revelations that could forever change the narrative of her lost love and painful divorce. Who was this friend? And what secrets about Robert were worth dredging up memories long sealed away? That evening, Miranda sat in the quiet solitude of her car outside the Bluebell Cafe, a quaint, old-world venue adorned with flowering window boxes and softly glowing lights. The cool air smelled of rain and promise, and every minute stretched into an eternity. As she awaited the arrival of someone who claimed to hold pieces of her past, the door's soft chime startled her from her reverie. The bell above the entrance rang, and out stepped a tall, distinguished man clad in a navy overcoat. His eyes, a striking shade of gray, seemed to carry the weight of untold stories. As he approached, Miranda's instincts screamed caution, yet the longing for closure was irresistible. "Miranda?" he inquired softly, his voice gentle yet laced with urgency. "I'm Edward. I knew Robert a long time ago, and there are truths about him and your past that you deserve to know." Miranda's breath caught as his words reverberated in her mind, colliding with the raw pain of betrayal and the desperate desire for answers. In that dimly lit moment, as the murmur of the cafe blended with the distant hum of the city, Miranda sensed that her life was teetering on the brink of transformation. The secrets of the past were poised to unravel, promising not only revelations of lost love and betrayal, but also the possibility of rediscovering her true self. Before she could find her voice, Edward leaned in and murmured, "There's something about Robert, something I've kept hidden for years, that will change everything you thought you knew." Inside the Bluebell Cafe, the ambient chatter faded into a low hum as Edward began to speak. His eyes never left Miranda's, and with each word, a tide of suppressed emotion surged within her. "Robert wasn't the man you believed him to be," Edward said. his gaze shifting around as though the shadows might be listening. I met him when we were both young, when life was filled with reckless dreams and secrets that burned like wildfire. Back then, he was charming, ambitious, and dangerously unpredictable. Edward's confession washed over Miranda like a tidal wave. She leaned forward, her heart aching with each revelation. "What do you mean?" she whispered, her voice trembling with anticipation and fear. Edward's eyes flickered with regret as he continued. "After you and Robert married, he fell under the influence of a man whose name was often whispered among the elite man, with secrets so dark they could ruin lives. Robert was desperate to belong, to be part of something larger than himself. That's when he made a choice that altered everything." He paused, gathering the shattered fragments of memory. Robert wasn't merely unfaithful, he became entangled in a covert scheme, one that I too was once part of. When things spiraled out of control, he tried to cover his tracks by erasing anyone who could expose him. Miranda's mind reeled. The diary, the cryptic note, and Edward's revelations converged to form a picture of a life she had never known, a labyrinth of secrets and lies. "What did he do?" she demanded, her voice cracking under the weight of fury and despair. Edward's expression hardened. "There was one fateful night, in a city that never sleeps, when Robert was involved in a deal that went disastrously wrong. Innocent people were hurt people I was close to, and I tried to stop him, but he was already too far gone." He looked into Miranda's eyes as if seeking forgiveness for sins too heavy to bear. "I left that life behind, vowing to protect those caught in the crossfire. I never had the courage to tell you until now." As Edward's words sank in, Miranda's thoughts drifted back to the small, inexplicable moments, the furtive phone calls Robert made in hushed tones, the secret meetings he abruptly departed from, and the whispered conversations she had dismissed as coincidences. Now, the puzzle was beginning to assemble itself, a grotesque mosaic of betrayal and deception. Outside, the rain began to fall in a slow, relentless rhythm. Inside the cafe, the atmosphere grew heavy with regret and unspoken truths. Edward continued, "I know how deeply you trusted him, how you believed every word he uttered. But Miranda, he was playing a dangerous game, and when the stakes got higher, he made choices that betrayed not just you, but also our friendship and the lives of many others." Miranda's throat constricted as she asked, "So, what was the deal? Who was he involved with?" Edward hesitated before slowly retrieving an old, worn photograph from his coat pocket. In it, Robert was smiling broadly, standing beside a mysterious man with sharp features and an unmistakable air of authority. "This is Vincent," Edward revealed quietly, "a man with deep connections to powerful circles." Robert believed that by aligning himself with Vincent, he would secure a place in a world of influence and wealth. But Vincent's promises were as ephemeral as smoke. When the deal collapsed, Robert did everything he could to cover it up, even if it meant keeping you in the dark. Miranda's eyes filled with tears as the weight of betrayal threatened to engulf her. "You're saying all this time I was living a lie? That the love I cherished was built on secrets and half-truths?" Edward's voice softened. "I'm sorry, Miranda. I wanted to tell you so many times, but I was afraid of what it might do to you. The truth, however, always finds its way to the surface. And there's more. The diary you found wasn't simply a farewell note. It was a map, a guide to uncovering the truth about Robert's final days." Before Miranda could press further, the cafe's door swung open with a gust of wind, drawing their eyes. In strode a woman whose presence exuded confidence and quiet authority. Her raven black hair framed a face that was both determined and pained, and her eyes, sharp and discerning, locked onto Miranda's with an intensity that spoke of untold stories and dangerous truths. "I'm sorry to interrupt," the woman said in a cool, measured tone, "but I believe I have something that belongs to you." She extended her hand, revealing a small antique key. This key opens a safety deposit box in Milana box that Robert secured just before his death. Inside, you'll find documents that could explain everything. Miranda's heart raced as she took the key. Its chill in her palm was a tangible promise of answers, and yet another link to a past, steeped in mystery and deceit. "Who are you?" she managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman's eyes softened with shared pain. "My name is Isabella. I was close to Robert and to Vincent." "I too have spent years searching for redemption in the wake of the chaos he left behind. Miranda, I know this is a lot to take in, but you deserve to know the truth, and you deserve a chance to reclaim your life. As the rain drummed softly against the cafe windows, Miranda realized that her journey was taking an even darker turn. The threads of her past were entwined with secrets far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The revelations of hidden alliances and betrayals were not solely about Robert. They reached into the lives of people who had fought their own battles in the shadows. Before the three could settle into more discussion, the moment was broken by the relentless rhythm of the rain and Miranda's pounding heart. With Edward and Isabella at her side, she felt both the sting of betrayal and the fragile hope of new beginnings stirring within her. That night, guided by the directions Isabella provided, Miranda and her newfound allies traveled to Milan. The ancient city welcomed them with a cool, misty embrace and a tapestry of narrow cobblestone streets and historic architecture. Every step toward the venerable bank building seemed to echo with the weight of secrets long concealed. The Milan morning was muted and somber, with soft gray clouds blanketing the sky. Miranda approached the bank, a majestic 19th century building with high arched windows and marble steps that spoke of a bygone era. Her heart thudded not only with apprehension, but also with the anticipation of finally confronting the past. Inside, a clerk eyed the antique key with a subtle shift in expression before nodding silently. "Follow me," he said in a low voice, leading them down a narrow corridor lined with countless safety deposit boxes. At last, they arrived at box 177A number that seemed almost symbolic in its quiet finality. With trembling fingers, Miranda inserted the key into the lock. After a series of clicks and the soft clatter of tumblers, the box swung open with a sigh of age. Inside, nestled on a bed of dark velvet, lay 3 items: a sealed envelope bearing Robert's name, a stack of faded documents tied with a fraying ribbon, and a thin leather journal identical to the one she had discovered in her attic years ago. Miranda's eyes widened as she carefully lifted the documents. The first item was a photograph, black and white, capturing a moment of raw emotion. In it, Robert smiled in an unguarded way, a smile that was both tender and melancholic. His arm was draped around a young woman whose face bore a striking resemblance to Miranda's own in youth. For a split second, Miranda's breath caught as she recognized a reflection of her own lost innocence. Isabella's voice broke the silence. "That is Lillian." She was the secret that Robert never forgave himself for. Miranda's hand shook as she unfolded the sealed envelope. The letter, penned in Robert's familiar hand, began, "My dearest Miranda, if you are reading this, then my sins have found their penance. I did what I did not out of malice, but to protect you from a darkness I unwittingly brought into our lives. I was drawn into a web I never meant to be part of. I was forced to choose between loyalty to a dangerous man and the sanctity of our love. Lillian, our daughter, was born before I knew what love truly meant. I never told you I was too ashamed. I tried to find her, but the forces that held me captive made it impossible. I have left clues for you. Find her and forgive me if you can." Tears slid silently down Miranda's cheeks as she clutched the letter close. A daughter, one she had never known existed, was now a part of the hidden tapestry of her past. The pain of betrayal mingled with a profound sense of loss, but also with the spark of hope that perhaps this revelation could be the key to healing. They then turned their attention to the leather journal, its pages filled with detailed entries chronicling Robert's inner torment and the dangerous liaisons that had defined his final years. One entry recounted a secret meeting in a dimly lit hotel room in New York where Robert's voice had trembled as he admitted his deepest regret and confessed his desperate desire to shield Miranda from the consequences of his actions. In another entry, dated mere days before his death, Robert described a moment of clarity, a moment when he realized that redemption might be possible if he could somehow find Lillian and bring her into the light of forgiveness. His words, raw and unfiltered, evoked a sense of sorrow that resonated deeply within Miranda. Every sentence was a reminder of the love that had once been and of the mistakes that had led them both down this painful path. Outside the bank, the Milan afternoon grew quieter. Isabella and Edward stood by Miranda as she absorbed the full measure of these revelations. The weight of the past was now laid bare, yet within that heaviness lay the possibility of renewal. Miranda's heart, though battered by years of neglect and betrayal, stirred with the promise of rediscovery. "It's time we find Lillian," Isabella said softly. "We owe it to Robert and to you to bring her back into our lives. Perhaps in doing so, you can finally forgive and heal." Returning to her modest hotel room that evening, Miranda found herself enveloped in a whirlwind of memories. Flashbacks of her early years with Robert intermingled with the shocking revelations of the past few days. She remembered the time when Robert had first swept her off her feet, his eyes alight with dreams and promises of a future filled with hope. Back then, the future had seemed so bright, but somewhere along the way, secrets had grown like shadows, obscuring the light. Unable to sleep, Miranda spent the long hours poring over every document, every diary entry. In her mind, fragments of a life she never knew of, a daughter lost to time and circumstance, weaved a tapestry of regret and longing. She recalled whispered conversations in the quiet of the night, subtle hints that had once passed unnoticed. Now, every word in the journal took on new meaning. Determined, Miranda resolved to take action. "I have to find her," she whispered to herself. "I have to know who she is." The next morning, armed with the clues from Robert's letters and the journal, Miranda reached out to contacts suggested in the documents, a network of individuals who had once been part of Robert's secret life. One name recurred: Elena Moretti, a former associate who had long since distanced herself from the dangerous world of Vincent. With trepidation, Miranda arranged a meeting in a quiet cafe near Milan's Central Station. Elena, a woman in her early 50s with a resolute demeanor, greeted Miranda with a mixture of pity and determination. "I knew this day might come," Elena said as she motioned for Miranda to sit. Over cups of strong Italian coffee, Elena recounted what she had heard in hushed tones many years ago. "Lillian was born into a world of secrets," Elena explained. After her birth, Robert was desperate to keep her hidden. He feared that if anyone learned of her existence, it would not only shatter your life, but also expose a network that could ruin many lives. "I lost track of her over time, but I know a few things. She was raised by a family connected to one of Vincent's minor partner's people, who eventually distanced themselves when the storm broke. I believe she might still be in Italy, perhaps under a different name." Miranda's eyes filled with determination. "Elena, do you have any idea where I can begin looking?" Elena leaned in closer. "I have one last piece of information, a name. In a hidden folder I kept, there's a reference to a girl named Liliana Rossi. It's possible that Lillian grew up with this name. You should start by contacting the Rossi family. I warn you, thought this search might dredge up more than just family secrets." With a racing heart, Miranda thanked Elena and left the cafe with renewed purpose. The thought of finally reuniting with the daughter she never knew ignited a fire within her. This was more than just solving a mystery. It was a chance for redemption, for both her and for Robert's shattered soul. Over the next several weeks, Miranda embarked on a journey that took her across Italy. She traveled from Milan to small towns and villages, following breadcrumbs left in the tangled web of her husband's past. Along the way, she encountered individuals who had been touched by the ripple effects of Vincent's clandestine world. Some were kind and offered gentle guidance. Others were shadowed by fear, reluctant to speak of old wounds. In a quiet village on the outskirts of Florence, Miranda finally met a woman named Liliana Rossi. Liliana was in her early 40s, with kind eyes that belied a lifetime of hardship and resilience. Their first meeting was filled with hesitant glances and tentative conversation. Over cups of herbal tea in Liliana's modest home, Miranda learned fragments of the story. Liliana had been told that her existence was a closely guarded secret and that she had been raised by a loving yet secretive family who had shielded her from the dangerous ties of her birth. Tears welled in both women's eyes as Miranda delicately explained who she was and the truth about Robert. Liliana listened with a mixture of shock and sorrow, her hands trembling as she clutched a faded photographic picture of a young Robert with a baby in his arms, a picture she had kept hidden for decades. "I always wondered about my origins," Liliana murmured. "I was given a new name to protect me, but deep down, I felt there was a part of me missing a connection to something I could never name. Now I know I was loved in a way that I never fully understood. In that moment, a fragile bridge was formed between Miranda and Liliana Bridge, built on shared pain, hope, and the possibility of new beginnings. Miranda vowed to help Liliana piece together the fragments of her lost past, and, in doing so, heal the wounds of both their hearts. Back in Milan, Miranda, Liliana, Edward, and Isabella gathered at a quiet sunlit park. The air was crisp, and the gentle rustle of leaves provided a serene backdrop to their meeting. Here, amidst the beauty of nature and the promise of new beginnings, they began to unravel the final layers of a story that had haunted them for decades. Miranda revisited the documents from the safety deposit box one last time. Each piece of evidence, the photograph, the letters, the journal, now resonated with a new meaning. Robert's actions, as flawed and tragic as they were, had been driven by a desperate need to protect those he loved from forces beyond his control. His secret life was a mosaic of regret, sacrifice, and an unyielding hope for redemption. In a series of heartfelt conversations with Isabella and Edward, Miranda came to understand that forgiveness was not about excusing the past. It was about freeing herself from its lingering chains. "I've spent so many years holding on to anger and betrayal," she confessed one afternoon, her voice trembling with raw emotion. "But now I see that every scar, every tear, has led me to this moment where I can finally choose to live again." Edward, whose own past was marred by regret and remorse, nodded in silent agreement. "We all have ghosts we must confront," he said softly. "Robert's ghost, the ghost of secrets and choices, has finally brought you here. Now it's time to let go and embrace a future defined by your own choices." Liliana, sitting quietly beside them, added, "I always felt there was something missing in my life, a truth I couldn't grasp. Now that I know who I am, I want to build my life without the shadows of the past." In the weeks and months that followed, Miranda and Liliana forged a bond that transcended blood and circumstance. Together, they began the arduous process of healing. Miranda used the trust fund that Robert had left behind to restore her once neglected home, turning it into a sanctuary of art, literature, and hope. She began writing again, first in quiet journals, then in published memoirs that resonated with countless women who had endured loss and betrayal. Her voice, once silenced by sorrow, now rang out with the power of resilience and the promise of second chances. Isabella and Edward continued to play guiding roles in their lives. Isabella's quiet strength and shared experiences helped both Miranda and Liliana navigate the often turbulent emotions that accompanied the uncovering of long-buried secrets. Edward, too, found solace in helping mend broken hearts, having long carried the weight of his own unspoken apologies. In a poignant twist of fate, one crisp autumn day, Miranda received one final letter. The envelope bore no return address, and the handwriting was unfamiliar. Yet the message inside was unmistakably warm and encouraging. "Your story is one of hope and redemption. Let your past fuel the future you are meant to create." Reading those words, Miranda felt the echoes of forgotten promises transform into gentle reminders of survival. She realized that while the past could never be erased, it no longer held power over her. Instead, it had become the very foundation upon which she built her new life, a life defined by courage, authenticity, and the unwavering belief that even in the darkest of times, love and redemption can bloom. At a celebratory gathering held in her restored home, surrounded by friends, family, and even strangers who had found inspiration in her story, Miranda took a moment to reflect. Looking out over the warmly lit room, she whispered to herself, "For every scar, there is a story of survival. For every tear, a promise of a love reborn." And so, as the echoes of forgotten promises faded into a gentle refrain, Miranda and Liliana embraced the future with open hearts. Their journey had been one of loss and betrayal, but it was also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that even when the past is shrouded in darkness, the light of forgiveness and love can guide us home. In that moment, Miranda understood that redemption was not a destination, but a lifelong journey, a journey that, with every step, brought her closer to the truth of who she was and the promise of who she could become. Years later, Miranda love lost, a daughter found, and the transformative power of forgiveness. Liliana, too, blossomed into a compassionate advocate for those searching for their own lost identities. Her past, once a source of pain, now a cornerstone of her strength. Together, they proved that even the most tangled webs of secrets and betrayal could give way to new beginnings. In the end, the echoes of forgotten promises were not a dirge for what had been lost, but a hymn celebrating the endless possibility of a redemption, a promise that every scar, every tear, and every heartache was simply a stepping stone on the path to a love reborn.